Welcome to Digital and FinTech Analytics channel.
In the last lecture, we saw corresponding to each of the user ID in the test data set, we are getting the final recommendation. Basically, the number of top 20 products corresponding to each user ID in the test data set. Now, we will see how good is our prediction. So, to know how good our prediction is, generally we compare the predictions with some ground truth data. So, what is the ground truth data over here? Or what is the actual data over here? Like we have to compare the predictions with some baseline, right? On the basis of which we can say like, okay, since there is this much of overlap, we can say like this model is doing good. So for that, what we do over here is like we have this final recommendation and what is our ground truth data over here. So if you remember the initial part of data preparation, we had read two different data sources. One is like staffing history and one is like staffing future. So what was staffing future? Staffing future is basically the last transaction that each user has done. So if you see the staffing futures PD, we have done some uh, data manipulation on top of this data frame. So if you see data future one, yeah. So what we are doing over here is like what we see over here is basically every user ID has only one transactions and there are few products in that one transaction. This one transaction is the last transaction of each of the user ID. If you see like for all the user ID, it's like only one order number corresponding to each of the user ID. And there are few items that they have purchased in their last transaction. So we are rolling it up on the user ID level and it's a list of list. But remember the inner list contains only one list. It's not like multiple lists are there. And that one transaction is kept as a list of list. So this is our ground truth data, DF ground truth. And we will compare our predictions with this ground truth data. So how we do that? Let's look into that. So once we have our predictions for each of the user ID, we have the predictions. Now what we are doing is like we are reading that ground truth data. And as I was saying, like it was a list of the list, the number of orders that have been purchased in the last transaction is the list of list. So we are like just unlisting it so that only one list is present in the last transaction. This is our like final prediction for each user ID. We are having a final prediction. This is of length 20 in this case. Then we have our ground truth data. So what we are doing is like we are merging, joining the ground truth data with the test data set, user IDs and their recommendation. And also we, if you want, this merge is optional, but if you want, you can merge it to have some extra information. But like with this, our columns of interest are like the user ID. These are the users in the test data set. The final recommendation. So for each user, we are recommending 20 products in our ground truth data, which is basically what are the items that the users have purchased in their last transaction. So it could be of any number. It could be 3, it could be 10, it could be 20. Any number of items could have been purchased in the last transactions. This is our prediction. This is our actual. We will be passing these two columns to each of the function. Like we will be judging the quality of the model on the basis of recall, NDCG, and personalized hit ratio. So in each of the functions, we are passing the actuals and predictions, and we will be getting the final recall value. Similarly, we'll be passing the actuals and predictions, and we'll be getting the final NDCG value. And similarly, we'll be passing the actuals and prediction and getting the final PHR value. And this recall value, NDCG value, and PHR value will be getting corresponding to each of the user ID. And finally, we will get the average of all those recall, NDCG, and PHR prediction rate ratio. And that will give us like the final values on the basis of which we are judging the quality of the model. So with that, we'll start understanding this metrics in detail. So first is recall. So what is recall? Let's understand with the help of an example. Suppose we have a user UJ for whom the ground truth basket contains 10 items and the system predicts a basket of 5 items for this user. Out of these 5 predicted items, 3 items are actually present in the user's ground truth basket. So using this formula, which is basically saying the overlap between the predictions and the ground truth basket divided by the total number of items in the ground truth basket. So we have an overlap of 3 items in the predictions and the ground truth basket, and the total number of items in the ground truth basket is 10. So we can say like the recall is 0.3 or 30%. So the recall score for user UJ in this example is 30%, indicating that the system was able to recommend 30% of the items that the user actually found relevant or chose to interact with. So that's pretty much on the recall. If you have to go to the coding part, we can see what is happening in this code. We are getting the actuals and the predictions. We are getting the counts of the overlap between the actuals and predictions over here. This list comprehension, what it does is loops over each of the items in the prediction data set for a particular user and then looks for that particular item in the ground truth basket. If it is there, then how many items are there? That is being calculated using the length function. So that gives us the overlap counts. Then comes like total counts. Total counts is basically the denominator. It basically says like how many items have been purchased in the last transaction of a particular user. That is coming from the length of the actuals. And then comes like the overlap counts by total counts. So overlap counts by total counts gives us the final recall value. So if you see like here to the function recall, we are passing the ground truth unleashed. That is our ground truth data as actuals. And the final recommendation is the predictions. And we are doing all these calculations over actuals and predictions. And we are getting the final recall for each of the user ID in the test data set. That is like recall for you. So like if I have to explain this one with detailed manner for a user, for a particular user, uh, user say like um, user number one in the prediction data set, we have say like 20 items, and in the actuals or say like ground truth, we have around how many? Say like 10 items. So say like the overlap between this 20 items, this set uh, and this set, the overlap, like we say like prediction overlap with the actuals is say like there are like 5 items which is common across the prediction as well as the actuals. So 5 divided by the actuals, total number of items in the actuals, which will be 10. So the final recall value will be zero point 0.5. So this zero point 0.5 or 50%. So this zero point 0.5 or 50% means the system was able to recommend 50% of the item that the user actually found relevant or chose to interact with. So that's how like this recall is being calculated. And like just want to point out like this is the formula for the recall that has been coded up.
That's a wrap for today's video. If you found this content valuable, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future insights into data science, AI, machine learning, and analytics. Looking to master data science or drive data driven success? I offer expert training, mentorship, and consultancy for individuals and organizations. Let's collaborate. Reach out via my contact details in the bio.